Welcome to the Active Advisor Podcast, brought to you by Harbor Capital. Join us as we delve into the dynamic financial advisory world, learning from industry pros who have built thriving practices and helped thousands of investors live better lives. I'm Bryan Moore, and with a rotating cast of co-hosts, I'll be chatting with some of the brightest minds in the business to bring you valuable insights on practice management and investment research that works for advisors and their clients. Joining me today on this episode of the Active Advisor Podcast is Taylor Nissi. Taylor Nissi is a founder of Pleasant Street Wealth Advisors. Taylor's a certified financial planner who focuses on providing high-impact advice and guidance to individuals, businesses, and family. The team at Pleasant Street Wealth Advisors is on a mission to help more people have confidence, peace of mind, and clarity in their financial life. Welcome, Taylor, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Bryan. Glad to be here.
My co-host for this episode is J.R. Shields, who's a fellow colleague of mine at Harbor Capital. J.R. is VP and Business Development Manager and a certified ETF advisor. Thanks for joining us, J.R.
Sure. Thanks, Bryan.
So, Taylor, we're going to ask you a couple of questions here to start. Opening question is kind of something we always like to start with. Really, kind of what is the first memory you have related to money or investing?
That's a great question. So my first money memory is actually picking up crab apples on Cape Cod at my grandmother's house. She would pay us half a penny per crab apple. We would pick up, a bunch of them, a lot, I guess, and then take that money and go directly to the penny candy store and buy as much candy as we could. So that was my first, idea of earning money, spending money, and how that works. And then my first investing memory is while I was in college and the iPhone launched, I had a job working at a hedge fund as an analyst. And what that meant is I would literally call Apple stores around the nation and try to get a gauge of whether people were buying them or if BlackBerry was still going to remain the dominant smartphone. So that was my first experience thinking about things through the investor's perspective.
Excellent. I do miss a good BlackBerry, I can't lie. There's something tactile about the keys. You're a co-founder of Pleasant Street Wealth Advisors, but you started your career at Wells Fargo. And so you've seen the advisory business from two totally different vantage points. What is it that's most meaningful or important to you about working in the independent structure, and what has been most surprising to you?
Great question again. Our mission at Pleasant Street is to, help our clients have confidence, peace of mind, and clarity in their financial life. And we want to deliver value at every interaction. So we felt that the best venue for that is in the independent space. The wirehouses have, a lot of things that they like done in a certain way, technologies that they like to use in a certain way. So the freedom of independence allows us to leverage the resources, whether it's the tools and vehicles we're using for the investor part of the equation, or the technology we're using to communicate with clients, how we communicate, and then also illustrating, the ideas and the impact of the implementation of those ideas over a client's life. So really the flexibility of strategies, vehicles, and the flexibility with technology.
And Taylor, I think you've done an excellent job of the branding around Pleasant Street Wealth Advisors. Do you mind just giving us a little insight into the significance of the pineapple in your logo?
Sure. Yeah. So growing up in New England, you'd walk down a street on Cape Cod or, on any of the islands or anywhere really, and you'd see pineapples kind of carved into doors and fence posts and things like that. You see it down in Charleston as well. And so this is something that I was always interested in asking about why. And the history behind that is in the 17th century, when we had, very vibrant trade routes with other parts of the world, when a captain's ship came back and they had a successful trip, everyone was relatively healthy, they brought back goods and all that stuff, they would leave a pineapple on their doorstep to signal to the community, come on in, we want to share our prosperity with you. And so for us, the pineapple signals that to the world. We want to share our expertise, we want to share our knowledge, we want to help our clients prosper, and we want everybody to share in that with us.
Wow, that's a great backstory. And I know you've got a baby on the way. Congratulations. Wanted to ask, how has impending parenthood changed your perspective at all in the way you advise clients on their financial planning or management?
Yeah, great question. I'd say it's provided a new level of empathy for those young parents, kind of understanding the, how they view the world and how they view situations. It's something that's always been important to us as financial planners. We always have to kind of have that long view, whether it's an individual thinking about, or family or a business thinking about children, or thinking about charity, or thinking about other legacies that are important to them. So nothing's really changed on the planning side, but I'd say from a perspective side and, having, more empathy and understanding of what it's like to weigh some of those decisions as you design your estate, think about the benefits of insurance or structure a portfolio for the long term.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. And I know you were a collegiate athlete and you continue to stay involved in coaching youth lacrosse. How have you drawn from your experience as an athlete in the work that you do today?
I'd say it's, understanding the importance of having a commitment to my craft. So whether it's, coaching or playing sports, the best athletes I've ever been around are the people that love to practice, not necessarily love to play the game, but love to practice. And, I have that same attitude and mindset. I love what I do. I love reading. If you could see my office right here, this is a wall of books about taxes and insurance and investment strategies and really boring stuff for the average person, but I love it. I got my CFP designation. I continue to pursue other designations. Right now, I'm going through the certified exit planning certification to help with business owners as they exit. So I think it's having that dedication and commitment to always trying to improve my ability to serve my clients and deliver value.
That's awesome. You may need some of those books on some of those late nights when your new baby won't go to sleep. Kind of help you.
Yeah.
You talk about working only with clients where you can make a significant impact. What does that mean in practice? And does Pleasant Street have a typical client profile or focus, either in your current book or in kind of the as you continue to look out and build your book?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we want to deliver value in every interaction. Even our prospecting process is designed to give people who come talk to us, we'll answer their biggest questions right away. They'll leave that process, whether they decide to join our firm or not, with a financial plan. 1-year plan of here's what you should go out and do it. And so, that bleeds over into our practice in everything, whether it's the monthly newsletter, the webinars we do, or a client meeting. We want to be delivering value and helping people understand the world better. And, so how does that end up taking shape as in our clients? We have kind of 3 clients, I'd say right now. We've got folks who've been tremendous savers throughout their life, and they've done a great job. They've built up, over $500,000 of investable assets, and they're thinking about retirement. And that's where we can come in, right? There's a very different skill set and knowledge base you have to have for saving. And then also, how do we turn that into a tax efficient portfolio design for longevity? And that's where we can come in that level of complexity, add a lot of value. Our second biggest client group is young, high earning folks. As we talked about, life changes, right? You've got kids, you've got family. It's one thing when it's just you and there's not a lot to worry about. But as life grows and you deal with what we call the burden of success, so people who are in the highest tax bracket, equity compensation, partnerships at law firms or small financial firms, how do we navigate all those moving parts? And again, that's somewhere where we've got good systems and processes to help deliver value immediately. And then the last piece is working with business owners. I don't think I've ever met a single business owner who, when we ask them about the economy getting challenging or challenges in their business, they've never had their employees miss a paycheck. But if things get tough, they miss paychecks. So how do you navigate that type of stuff? How do you design benefit plans to attract and retain high quality employees? And then ultimately, how do you decide to pass this thing you've spent your life basically another child? What do you do with it when you're kind of ready to relax? So that's our other piece.
Well, it's definitely 3 interesting avenues, and I'm sure it keeps you very busy.
Yes, it does.
You founded the firm just a couple years before the pandemic. How has COVID shaped the way you conduct business, whether acquiring new clients or servicing existing ones?
Definitely technology. It was one of the drivers why we decided to go into the independent space. We could see what people were doing outside of the wirehouses, and that was, to us, was very exciting. So COVID for us was really just an affirmation of a theory that we had already had. And it's funny, I'm here at a home office. We had looked into getting some office space pre-COVID. COVID happened. We didn't. We reached out to all of our clients and said, hey, if I got an office, would you come to it? And 99% of them said no. Now with technology, we can meet them where they are, when they want to. We can deliver interactive, content, things like that they can watch whenever they want quickly. And it helps us, deliver, again, more value, be more educational, more transparent. People can access stuff much quicker on demand, as opposed to only seeing us in person at scheduled meetings.
No, that's great. Looking out over the next 2 to 3 years, are there specific growth or other areas and goals you're focused on as a business?
Yep. So this is a very human business. Again, getting to know people, understanding what's important to them, and then helping them make really impactful, decisions that will have a huge impact on their lives and lives of others. So for us, it's continuing to build the team that can support that effort and continuing to find the right people that we can bring into these relationships and make them better, improve our client service, our client engagement, more client events, things like that, to try to keep the support network in place and continue, building a great client experience.
So you're active on LinkedIn. How do you think about content creation and having a social media presence or in the context of, your goals for the business?
For us, social media is really about just staying top of mind and having a presence. I think these days, anyone, even if a client that loves us refers us out and says, hey, you should go talk to Taylor, the first thing that person's going to do is plug it into Google and see what they see. So right there, it's just kind of saying, we're here. This is what we're all about. This is how we think about things. So I'd say that's really the biggest piece for us. It's more so that than actual client acquisition or anything. It's more just sharing our ideas and making sure people know what we're all about.
That's awesome. Advisor guru Michael Kitches recently posted on LinkedIn a short list of the most important attributes of a good financial planner: organization, accountability, objectivity, proactivity, education, and partnership. Knowing that all of these are of the utmost importance for long-term success, where do you think Pleasant Street shines the brightest?
First, I want to say I love Michael Kitces and all of the stuff he does. Second, I want to say that I would add 2 items to this list: communication and accessibility. For us, getting back to the same theme, we like to educate clients. We want to be adding value in every communication, and we communicate in a lot of different ways, from phone calls, emails, webinars, events. And so that for us is really important. And we think we do a good job, possibly to the point that our clients actually are annoyed with us. And then second, I would say off of his list, objectivity and accountability. We're always here. We're explaining, what's going on in the world. We're taking an objective approach to it. We're not thinking about, anything about what's most important to our client.
Taylor, how are you building investment research and portfolio construction into all the other things that you have to do as a business owner and advisor? Are there specific external resources or platforms that you've found success weaving into your business?
So we have the benefit of coming from wirehouses where we had access to a ton of information, and now we're partnered with Schwab, who again gives us a ton of resources. So we leverage a lot of different resources depending on the situation. We have external managers who we partner with. We've got some really good research, but out of all of that noise and all of those resources, there's really just 2 or 3 that have been the best for us for the longest time, that consistent. And so we really, value those partnerships the most.
That's great. Thank you. And what would you say to anyone thinking about breaking away from the wirehouse or large firm model and going independent? I know this is a very hot topic right now across the industry.
For sure. Well, first of all, I'd say call me. I'm happy to talk with anybody about it for, 20, 30 minutes and just kind of talk about my experience. And then second, I would say that, it's really not as hard as it seems. Once you decided to take the step, go for it. The hardest part is probably the due diligence you're going to need to do on figuring out what version, right? Do you want to go fully independent like we are, or do you want to do some shade of independence, something else? So as you're navigating that space, you're going to want to do a lot of due diligence on the technology partnerships you decide to use. And in addition, the one thing I'd add to that is do your due diligence, make the best decision possible, but don't be afraid to pivot. For example, for us, we thought we had the greatest client portal in the world when we first launched in 2018, and no one used it. We asked our clients why, and they were like, well, this isn't really the information I want. I want XYZ instead. So next year we changed. Same thing with our financial planning software. We went through two different iterations before we landed on the one that really wows our clients. They engage with it. They love it. So, make the best decision you can as quickly as you can. But if it's not working, change.
Thanks, Taylor. That's great insight. What is a skill that you believe an advisor starting on their journey today should really focus on developing in getting into the field?
I think the biggest thing for people in our position is communication, right? How are you empathetic and understanding to what's going on in a person's life? How are you taking really complex financial things, whether it's with things that we might think are so easy, like what is an ETF or what is a mutual fund? A lot of people don't even understand that. So how do we take these complex things and make them easy to understand? How do we use language that can simplify things? And then ultimately, how can we communicate consistently in a way that helps people make the right decision for their situation?
That's great. I actually think this is totally not on the script, but I actually do think maybe setting up a couple of questions with you, maybe doing a follow-up interview just kind of about that migration from going from kind of the wirehouse channel to kind of the independent channel, because I know it's something that a lot of people have talked about, and I know wirehouse advisors are definitely kind of actively looking at all the time. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think that would be something to be great to focus on. So I think we're going to go for the closing questions here. We, greatly appreciate you being a willing participant in the podcast today. We at Harbor believe wholeheartedly in active management, but every financial professional has their own take. What is your philosophy, and where does active matter the most?
So when it comes to portfolio construction, we are firm believers in the core satellite approach, where you're using passive for a big piece of your portfolio and you're using active as satellites around it to achieve specific purposes. So for us, it's also not really a where, but more a when, right? And for the past 10 years, we've had almost lowest interest rates in a long time. There's been, a lot of saber rattling with geopolitics, but not an outright war. And now you look around and all of that has changed dramatically. We're seeing volatility in the bond market, in the stock market. We're seeing geopolitical challenges with COVID, what's going on in Ukraine. So for us, it's definitely a much more active approach to investing these days. We think that this is really entering an environment of very clear winners and losers in terms of the companies and the industries as we move through some major changes, all the stuff I just touched upon. And then also, thematically, things like ESG, things like, the AI, Web3, all that, just navigating that whole change to infotech. We think it's really important to have a big piece of active management, both in, your equity sleeve, in your bond sleeve, and really anywhere that complements your portfolio, again, with the caveat, it all depends on your goals and your situation.
No, excellent. So how can people find you? What's your social sites?
Yep, absolutely. PleasantStreetWealth.com is our website. You can find us at Pleasant Street Wealth on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And yeah, we'd love to connect.
And I do want to follow up on something you mentioned earlier. I did sign up for your monthly newsletter. I would encourage everybody who listens today to do so as well. Definitely have seen some of the other examples of what you've written, and I think it's very, very informative and helpful.
Thank you.
Now we're going to go to my favorite part of the podcast, which is our 60 seconds with Taylor Nissi, or as I like to call it, the lightning round. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. Hobby?
Probably golf these days.
Lacrosse position?
Long stick midfield.
Got you. Favorite podcast?
Probably one of Michael Kitcey's.
Okay, or the Active Advisor. That's coming up.
Yes, that's correct.
That's
Active
right.
Advisor.
We're moving up.
Yeah.
Profession, if you weren't an advisor?
Probably coach or teacher.
Okay. So last thing you watched for fun?
Ted Lasso.
Perfect. Favorite famous Taylor? Swift, Lautner, or James?
Probably Taylor Swift right now.
Okay. You're going to go see her in concert?
I can't afford it.
Best career advice you've gotten?
The best career advice I've gotten was a mentor of mine. He did a lot of stuff, helped me out a lot. And I said to him, hey, Mark, what can I do for you? You've done so much for me. And he said, I'm on a mission to do as much good for as many people as possible. And that has really bled over into our own mission statement at Pleasant Street Wealth, and has meant a lot to me.
No, that's great. That's great. Messy desk or clean desk?
Messy.
Nice. Most used emoji in text messaging?
Probably the laughing face.
Okay. Mountains or beach?
Beach.
Mikey Powell or Paul Rebel?
Powell.
More important for advisors to be good listeners or good investors?
Listeners.
Hidden talent?
My wife would say making pizza.
There you go. We'll have to come over.
Yeah.
60-40 portfolio, a classic or a relic?
I think it's a more nuanced answer, but we are leaning more towards something a little different. I don't think any of our clients are invested 60. We're moving that allocation. So maybe it's an 80-20 or something like that. And then for the right people, we are using more alternative investment as well.
Gotcha. Must visit spot in Falmouth?
I'd say Eastman's Bait and Tackle. If you are looking for fishing stuff and fishing tips, they will lead you anywhere you want to go, and you will definitely catch something that day.
There you go. Best advice you've given to a client?
Great question. Again, this isn't an original idea of mine. This is advice someone else gave to me, but I passed it on to a bunch of people, and it's worked out pretty well for them. And that is that business begets business. And what that means is, don't go through life looking for what's going to benefit you the most all the time, or what outcome you're looking for. Give out into the world, and good things come back to you. And whether it's in business or in life, that's how we operate. It's how I operate, and it's been good for a lot of people.
No, that's great. Favorite way to get active?
Just getting outside. Love to golf, tennis. Get outside and be active.
Favorite Taylor Swift song?
Don't know. I don't even know if I could name one, to be honest. Even though I said that was my favorite Taylor.
That's the only reason I asked. I had to ask.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.